So, the country's in trouble. The debt's too high, too much money being spent, too much debt, you know, and it's a bad deal. It's a really bad deal. It's been coming for many years. You know, I know someone quite well. I've known for many, many years since I was a kid, and she's not a bad person, but she's always had very, very much difficulty handling her spending, you know. And she loves those credit cards. And 25 years ago, you know, she was doing this stuff. And, you know, as soon as she became age to get credit cards, she got credit cards. I didn't have one for many, 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 many years. I don't have one right now. Every few years I talked to her, she'd bring up the subject of her credit cards and how she had all this debt. And first of all, it was $2,000 or $3,000 she had, you know, 25 years ago. That was a lot of money back then. And how upset she was, and couldn't really afford to make the payments, and she was making these huge payments, and a lot of it was going to interest, and on and on. And she was miserable, and you know, I said, well, stop spending so much, but she didn't want to do that. And what she did instead is she took out a loan to pay off the credit cards. And okay, so whatever. Well, 2 or 3 years later, 4 years later, in tears again because there's too much money on the credit cards. This time it's, you know, it's $7,000, $8,000, $10,000 on the credit cards. You know, and that time I said, you've got a problem. You need to cut the credit cards up and stop using credit cards. I tell you this as a friend, and I did tell it to her as a friend. But she did not find it very nice. She blew up and went crazy, angry at me for suggesting such a thing. Then a couple of years later, 4 years later, 5 years later, again, now it's $15,000, $20,000 in credit cards. And when she brought it up again, I just started giggling because here we are again. You know, I knew it just something. You know, I mean, I just started giggling because what can I say? I can't say, you know, cut them up because I get yelled at. You know, I get into a fight with this person. You know, so that really made her mad. She almost kicked me out of her car, for Christ's sake. While it was moving. And this debt crisis reminds me of that. It's just silly ass spending. When you're spending somebody else's money or putting money in credit cards, it's easy to do. I did have a credit card at one time, and even I found, you know, had a little credit card, had a $1,000 limit. You know, I figured I was just going to spend a couple $100 on it, you know, and it was $1,000 before I could say, you know, what the hell, you know. It's easy, and it's really easy spending money when it's somebody else's money, when it's not your money. The sick thing is, in my mind, the really, really sick thing is, what's going on here, what's been going on for a long time is, these politicians are spending this money on special interests and this interest and that interest, not because it's good for the country, but because it's good for their re-election. They're willing to spend $1 billion or $1 trillion on somebody, some kind of special interest, okay, so they can get votes or get campaign money for themselves. They'll spend $1 billion or $1 trillion of our money to get a $100,000 campaign contribution for them to get reelected. That's what they'll do. Now, in my opinion, that's just a betrayal of trust, you know. And I'm not talking about one party or the other here. I'm talking about both parties. And the one way of knowing, you know, if someone's, you know, really has your interest at heart, or the interest of the general country at heart, is if they're doing stuff like that. You know, if you're one of those special interests, you probably like that guy because he's doing what you want him to do. Maybe you're going to send him a few bucks, you know. But it's not good for the rest of the country, you know. And maybe they're good for you for the time being, whatever special interest you may be involved with, if you are. But what I would say to you is that eventually things are going to completely collapse. And there'll be no more money for you at all. Not just less money, no money. I was just watching Stossel tonight. They had this fireman on there from some town somewhere. And the town kept doing the towns can't have a debt. But what they can do is they can borrow money from the pension funds. And Like 10 years ago, they knew they were spending out of control, and they wouldn't stop. They didn't even try. They just kept spending and spending and spending and all sorts of crap. This fireman worked his whole life as a fireman. He retires. He's retired a few years, and lo and behold, the city, whichever city this has happened in several cities around the country, because they've been borrowing money from the pension plans, and there was no money left, they declared bankruptcy and promptly stopped paying him his retirement. Jesus! And that's what I'm talking about. If you're some kind of a special interest out there who gets money from the government, you know, it's going to collapse eventually at this rate. It just is, you know. It's time to stop spending all this money. I mean, the government is just, you know, it's just crazy. You got to do something now, or it's going to be a complete and utter disaster with consequences, unintended consequences that none of us are going to like or be able to deal with. And we're just going to have to tough it out and brass it out at that point. That's just the way it's going to be. You know? It's crazy. You know? My friend finally, I mean, after she refinanced her house behind her husband's back and caused a divorce, she finally stopped spending all this money on credit cards. And finally, these days, she doesn't have a credit card. She finally learned a lesson after losing a man that, you know, someone she was in love with, and, you know, almost losing her home, and on and on and on, having to declare bankruptcy herself. Whether it'll stick or not, I don't know. But why go through that kind of catastrophe, you know, and that's what our country's headed for. And these people, these politicians, to me, look like a bunch of damn drug addicts who just can't get off the crack. And the crack is spending, you know. They just can't get off it. See, a lot of them won't get off it because the whole reason they spend all this money is not because they like spending money, but because they like getting votes. They like winning elections, and that's what gets them elections, is by giving money to special interests. And that's what it's really all about. And I think of that as nothing more of a betrayal. Betray the general interest, you know. And it's not even for the people that the special interests. They don't like these special interests. They're just, you know, tied up with them. They don't like the special interests they're giving money to. Not like their buddies. They just know if they pay these people off, they're going to get reelected. That's crazy. Well, I blabbered on long enough trying to fix the world's problems when I can't even fix my own. All right, folks. We'll talk to you later. Hope you're having a good time, and hope this mess gets fixed before we're all living in wearing little barrels. Talk to you later. The pipe's gone out.